angel of light, but it's not a natural light, it's an artificial light, right? You think of the lights even that are in here. These aren't natural lights, this is electricity. These are light bulbs that were created by man. You think of one of those big fly swatters that's got the giant light that the flies and the mosquitoes are attracted to because they see it and it's so bright. It's like, oh, we have to go there. And then the second they touch it, they're dead. We should be as natural lights. And Satan understands that as men, as humans, we are attracted to the bigger and the brighter things. And he knows how to manipulate it to where, okay, I know that we have these lights over here, but mine can be a little bit brighter, and they can even have some color to them. And they can be a little more fancy. And men tend to flock toward that. Why? Because we're creatures of vision. We see something, and we want it, and it's so magnificent to us. And Satan is an artificial light. He's not that natural light, and men have flocked toward it because he knows how to finesse it. He knows how to doctor it up and make it beautiful. So Satan knows what men want. Satan knows what men like. And it's just through our own strength that we have to realize that it's not the true light that we search for. It's just something that's been conjured up by Satan to pull us away from what the true light is.
Right, and on that, that's what it states on verse 15. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness. And that's what brother here is talking about. They put themselves as transformed as ministers of righteousness. And people gather themselves and they listen, and they're being misled by this false light that Nathaniel's talking about. But all this is to their end, according to their works. They also are going to have to face the Lord for all this wrong, false information that they've been giving the people. And there's a lot of false ministers in the world, and they all work for Satan, and we know that, but we don't point it out. We don't point it out because we're not supposed to judge, but we know that because they're not teaching the proper word of God. They're ministers that transform themselves.
They're into more of a profit.
Right.
You can see them with cars and private jets and huge churches and big groups, and they speak eloquently to exactly the same words people want to hear. They don't want to hear too much offensive. They don't want to hear about keeping the commandments or have to do this or do that. They know how to flow there because they know what the people want, what the congregation wants. And that's exactly what Lucifer knows. And, they might start off, innocently trying to preach the word and reach other people, but then they wind up being deceived.
Right.
And all they do is, it's an easy way of making money because they interview a lot of ministers, a lot of leaders. They said the only reason they get in there because it's free money, and they can get more money. That television, they pay for all that.
All this exposure,
It's there, and they're coated with all this beauty of what they're putting out, and the people,
they
go
fall for
into
it, They fall for
it, and and they don't teach doctrine. You don't see them, even quote anything. Keep the commandments, keep the Sabbath. Don't do this. This is what God wants. No, it's all their words. All the wording is what the people want and what they want to hear, and that's exactly what Satan is doing. They're all ministers of light, of the artificial light.
And this chapter is about what Paul is warning the leaders of Satan. If you read there, Jeff, chapter 11, verse number 3. No, that's another verse that I just want to bring up.
What are you?
2 Corinthians 11:3.
But I fear lest by any means, as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your mind should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ.
Okay. Again, here's Paul going back also that the Satan was able to mislead Eve through his cunningness. He also warns us to be careful that your mind should be corrupted from the simplicity that is of Christ. So we have to be careful of how we do things in ourselves in the spiritual sense, okay, and not in the evil way of Satan. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into the questions here or answers. Satan knows by many names and descriptions. Make sure you make yourself familiar with a subtitle. Subtle, okay, being, okay. So let's go to the first there, Brother Jerry. You want to go ahead and take that one?
Number 1 is a serpent. Genesis 3, 1, 2, 14. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, Yea, as God said, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden. And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. Verse 4, And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. 14, The Lord God said unto the serpent, Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. So the woman said, We can't eat of this one tree, we'll die. Tells he's a serpent, he's a deceiver. He said, Oh, you're not going to die. Come on, eat that fruit.
Right.
So-
There's that game, right? The game that Satan plays.
So the curse was placed upon him then, that he would have legs no longer,
Yeah.
crawl on his belly the rest of his life.
So we go back to what I was saying about Satan being in the world, right? So this is how he is in the world, and he still is his job to deceive. And as Brother Jerry was reading there on verse number 1 of chapter 3, yea, on the last part says, Yea, God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden. So she knew that she wasn't supposed to eat of every tree of the garden. She was told not to. Okay? But Satan, being very cunning, comes and tells her, You shall not surely die. You know, like somebody is in a store and somebody tells them to take something. He said, No, they're going to catch me. He said, No, they won't catch you. You see how Satan uses people to deceive you and doing something wrong? Well, that's what he was doing here. He was doing that himself and telling a person, Nah, you're not going to die. Nothing's going to happen to you. That's how Satan works. That's how he plays his games. And we're over here listening to those thoughts. Nobody sees me. Oh, now everybody sees you because there's cameras everywhere, right? But people still try to fight the system, and they get caught. And again, on verse 14, where Brother Jerry is right there, he says, And God said unto the serpent, Because thou has done this. You have done this wrong. You have done this evil. You have destroyed the purpose of my plan. Thou art cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly thou shalt go, and thus thou shalt eat all the days of thy life. That's pretty hard, right? That's pretty hard. But God was pretty upset of what he had done. He messed around with his plan, and he deceived this innocent person.
I see this as also as the devil. He doesn't spring everything on you at once. He may do a little bit, and then a little bit more. Because see, if you read verse 3, it says, she says to the devil, we can't eat of it, and we can't touch it. So I can see the devil saying, well, you don't have to eat of it, just touch it and see if you die. It leads you here a little bit, and then a little deeper, so possibly they touched it, and they said, well, yeah, we didn't die because we touched it, so probably not going to die if we eat it too. So then he'll lead you to the next step.
I got you. Yeah. Yeah.
To be subtle is to be very delicate with your wording, how you say certain things.
Yeah.
Like Brother Jerry said, they touched it, and they probably thought, nothing happened. You can even eat of it. It said, you won't die. And did he lie to them? Did they die physically? No. They ate it. And of course, their eyes were open, but they didn't die. But we know that they died spiritually. And like today, so many of us are in the church that grew up in the church, or even those who, came in later in life and are strongly convicted of the truth. At least as kids, we were taught, don't do this, don't do that. Your basics, right? Your clean and your unclean food. You can't break the Sabbath. A lot of these, things that we see in the Ten Commandments. Don't kill people. And you're raised in that, and you don't partake of it, right? Because why? Because if I do, then I'm going to die. Like my parents telling me, if I do it, that's wrong. Something's going to happen. I'm going to get super sick, and I'm going to die. At least that's my train of thought when I was growing up. And then, as you get older, we're not all perfect. Let me just stay at the start of that. You partake of it, right? You do it. Why? Because somebody says, it's fine. Like, don't worry about it. You're not. I've been doing it my whole life. Look, I'm perfectly fine. So you try it. Just like Eve. I didn't die. I'm good. I'm okay. Slowly but surely. Subtly they slip that in. Satan just kind of weaves his way into it, and then you do it, and it's like, I'm good. Like, nothing's wrong with me. And then slowly but surely, you further and further and further delve into it. And yeah, you didn't die physically, but you're dying spiritually as you continue. Why? Because you're going against the commandments of God. You're going against what God's teaching you. And it's these little things that you don't really recognize because you've been told not to do something your whole life because it's going to hurt you. And then when you do it, you don't actually physically get hurt. Or you don't feel bad about it. Let's say you break the Sabbath, you don't feel bad about it. Oh, I'm still alive. I can go on my day to day. But slowly but surely, you're killing yourself spiritually. And that spirit is just dying and dying and dying the further you delve into it. Just because you don't feel it physically doesn't necessarily mean you're not dying spiritually.
And remember what we were talking about, Satan, and how he works here in Isaiah and Ezekiel. Now we see him in the beginning of who he is and why he's in earth, because of his want, because of his envious act, because he stated that I want to do this, I want to go against God, I do want to. So here he is again, messing up with the plan of God. And here he presents himself to the children of God and deceived them. And that's his job, to deceive. And he deceived. He went ahead and fulfilled his obligation, that how he is and who he is, and did that against God's will. And Eve told him and said, but the fruit of the tree, on verse 3, which is in the midst of the garden, God said. Well, when she said God said, Satan knew who God was. So that's why he did this, to provoke God and make her be tempted, and she went ahead and took of the fruit. So you see how he doesn't care who he offends, as long as he does his job to take the children of God away from God. That's his work. Question number 2, or number 2, I should say. Morgan?
Lucifer, son of the morning, Isaiah 14:12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou bent down to the ground, which weakeneth the nations?
So in Genesis, he's called serpent. In Isaiah 14:12, he's called what? Lucifer. And what else?
The son of the morning, which
Son of
is
the morning.
kind of interesting because last week we talked about Jesus being the sun, and then all the angels being referenced as the sun, and it's like Jesus was the bright and morning star, and so he was the first morning, and then all the angels are the sons, and so it's interesting. So he's son of the first creation, which was Jesus. So it's saying, you, O Lucifer, who were made out of the image of Jesus.
I don't.
I'm just interesting in thought to think
Yeah.
about, because last week
Oh,
we
okay.
talked about the sons
Yeah.
were all the angels.
Yeah, but on this, I think he's called son of the morning because of his brightness, of this brightness that he is, and
Maybe so.
yeah,
And he's putting forth a false brightness.
right, and yeah, that's true. That was a false brightness. Even though it was given to him for a good purpose, he used it for a false purpose. Yeah. Number 3.
Lucifer's called morning star, as opposed to Jesus, the bright morning star.
Yeah.
Lucifer's just son of the morning because of his brightness, the way he was created.
Right.
That's all, morning star. But Jesus calls himself the bright and morning star.
Okay. Number 3. Jeff, you want to take that one?
See, First Chronicles 21:1, Job 56-9. And Satan stood up against Israel, told David to number Israel. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, Doth Job fear God for naught?
Verse 12.
unto Satan, Behold, all that he hath is in thy power. Only upon himself put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord.
Okay. So, how is he called here?
Satan.
Satan, right? On verse number 8, it states, and the Lord said unto Satan. So the Lord recognized him as Satan. Satan meaning the devil. Okay, and
In Hebrew, it's Hasatan.
ah,
In Hebrew, it's Hasatan. That's
yeah,
like
I got you.
his name.
I think I saw it, but I can't pronounce them, so I don't put them down. We also see here that verse 9 says, does Job fear God for none? And in verse 12, God said unto Satan, Behold, all that he had is in thy power. Only unto himself put not thy hand. So Satan went forth from his presence. So if we know this story here, we know that Satan here took everything away from Job: his house, his cattle, his family, his crops. He lost all. But God said, "Don't put your hand on him. Don't you touch him. Don't weaken him, or don't put anything on his body or anything like that." But I was thinking about this at home, and I said to myself, how would I react to something like that? This man's pride was taken. I would have really gone crazy. He was under a lot of pressure, a lot of to be able to go through all this and not curse God at all, even though his wife told him, "Hey, curse God, so that all this can go out of the way." And he says, "What's wrong with you, woman?" This is a very strong person who was went through a lot, and yet his faith was strong with God. But Satan would do that, and we have to be careful. Sometimes he can give you a lot too, as long as you got a lot, and he'll give you more and more as long as you don't pay attention to God. So you have to be careful on that other side of the coin there, right?
But Mario, these are two interesting stories, as you just mentioned. It talks about, you said that Satan knows that he can give you more and he can give you more, right? So these two stories, of course, we read in Job, we know the wealth of Job, how much that he had. And the title of this lesson is to know your enemy. Why? Because Satan knows you and he knows your weaknesses. And you need to know, and we need to know, not you specifically, we need to know how Satan can attack us. So these two stories here are two stories of men with power, of men with wealth. Job had wealth, and Satan knew to attack it. What are you going to do when I take this away? What are you going to do when you lose it all? And in David, in the story, the verses in Chronicles, this is the story of David. It said he provoked David to number Israel, like take a census to count how many soldiers do I have? How many people are in Israel? And you can think, what does that have to do with being rich? What does that have to do with having a lot? When men count how much they have, when they see their wealth, it gets to their head.
Right.
Because David at this time was king, and he counts the number of Israel. How many Israelites do I have? How great is my army? How great is my nation? And the Lord was upset with him. Why do you need to know how much that you have? If I'm with you, I'll take care of you and your kingdom.
Right.
Satan knows how to play to men. He knows that when men start to view and to count, basically, count everything that they have, as David did, and even as Job can see all of his riches, that becomes our downfall. Because in our head, we're thinking, I got it all. I got it made. I'm strong financially. I'm powerful,
Yeah.
as David probably thought. And what do you do when you take it away? Do you lose yourself? So these are two interesting stories that
Right,
show
right.
us that Satan doesn't just attack you physically as he did Job. He attacks these other things that in life that we seem to prioritize over God.
So, Brother Jerry, what is the arrangement here? Why is it that God allowed Satan to do this? If God knew the heart of Job, why would he let Satan take so much away from this one man here?
Yeah, I wondered that myself, but so to speak, we all have to go through trials
Yeah.
in our life to prove that we're worthy. And maybe this was just God letting this trial come upon
Yeah.
Job to prove he's worthy. And then it brings it on down as a good example for us. We must be consistent
Right.
in our life.
Right. Yeah.
But you see back in the First Chronicles 12:1 there, where Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel. See, this is another lie. That's the first one there called Satan. And that's another lie that the devil's telling, because God had already told David, don't number Israel. Don't count how many people's here. Don't take account of it. I don't want you to do that. Like Nathaniel says, we're not to find value in the great numbers or anything. So God told David not to do it. So what does the devil do? He comes on and says, just like he did Eve. Oh, it's okay. Go right ahead. Nothing's going to happen to you. Nothing's going to happen to Israel. Just go right ahead and number them anyhow. So he did. We read the whole story. They did get persecution from it.
Yeah.
That was my only point, was that he lied to Eve, he's lied here to David, he's going to lie to us also.
Yeah. So we just have to be careful how Satan works. If your plan is given that, and you have prayed about it, that you should do this according to God's will, then do it. And David should have done it. But he listened to this evil thoughts of Satan, and he numbered the people. And here in Job, we see how Satan also works, and but God is able to help us prevail from Satan. And sometimes we wonder and ask questions, why would Satan be allowed to do so much damage unto Job? Maybe God was just trying to prove to Job that he has worthy servants in the world that will abide with God, and they are able to withstand whatever Satan throws out there. And we'll talk about that more in the study. As a matter of fact, it's in the next question 4. Nathan, you want to take that one?
So number 4 says the devil. So this is Matthew 4 and Revelation chapter 20. Matthew 4, 1-11 reads, Then was Jesus led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward hungry. And when the tempter came to him, he said, If thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. And the devil taketh him up into the holy city, and setteth him on a pinnacle of the temple. He saith unto him, If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down. For it is written, He shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. Jesus said unto him, It is written again, Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Again the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, showeth him all the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them. He saith unto him, All these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall and worship me. And Jesus saith unto him, Then saith Jesus unto him, Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. And the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. Revelation 20, verse 10. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever.
Okay. So what's going on here in chapter 4 of Matthew?
Temptation of Jesus Christ before he was about to begin his ministry. You see that he had fasted 40 days and 20 nights. Marvelous feature of its own, right? You know, a man going without food, 40 days and 40 nights, food and water. And you see that Satan came to him, but it describes him as the devil. And it says in verse 5, talks about how the devil took him here, the devil took him there. And even Jesus, when he addressed him, he called him Satan. But we see that during the temptation of Jesus, that Satan was referenced as the devil. We always say the phrase, the devil made me do it, right? The devil made me do it, the devil made me do it. I know that was something we said when we were kids every time we were about to get a whooping. The devil made me do it, right? Try and cater to somebody's religious beliefs, that like it wasn't your own choice. And again, here we see Satan putting a choice in front of Jesus Christ.
Right.
To offer him basically the world in a nutshell. He offered him the world, and because he knew Jesus was in a state of weakness, he was hungry, he was tired from this fasting that he had been doing. But we know that Jesus was prepping himself for the journey that was to come. But again, we see Satan, the devil slipping in here, trying to prey on men's weakness when we're at our lowest of low, to try and get us to take the easy way out, trying to pull us away from the truth here.
And I think that's the main point right there, Nathan, where Jesus was in the wilderness, and here comes the devil and to tempt him. And knowing the situation, as you stated, Jesus, he had been fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, and afterward, he was hungry. He was hungry, and his brother Nathan said he was in a stage of weakness. And Satan knows, remember, he's very cunning, very trickery, how he works, right? So he says, hey, I'm going to give it a shot here. Let me go after Jesus and tempt him. And he tempts him once, and he tempts him twice, you know. And he says, on verse 4, he says, but every word that proceeded of the mouth of God, that is who he abides. And then on verse 7, he says, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God, he tells Satan. And then on verse 10, he says, get hence, Satan. In other words, get out of here, Satan. For it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only thou shalt serve. He was trying to do the same thing that he did with Eve, or that he did with David, or that he did with Job, and he thought he could do the same thing to Jesus, and he couldn't prevail. he couldn't prevail. So here we see that he's trying again to demonstrate himself that he is in control when he is not in control. He's not in control. That he can give him this or he can give him that or he can exalt him up so high. He's not in control. God is in control. And Jesus knew. Jesus knew that. That's why he told him, get thee hence, Satan. Because you're not in control. You're not in control. There's only one person you should worship, and that's God and not Satan. And Jesus knew that. And he was able to prevail. And in verse 11 says, then the devil left him, and behold, the angels came and ministered unto him, unto Jesus. So he couldn't prevail, so he left Jesus alone. Anything else that we can add to that?
Sister Ella says, I thank God for helping me find understanding in His holy word. It has helped me get through many difficulties, trials, and tribulations.
Amen.
I think that was my major takeaway from these verses was, we're always going to be tempted. And all 3 times Jesus was tempted, he said, it is written, it is written, it is written. He used the word, his knowledge of the word to shoo away, Satan. That's what we need to do, just remember the word and the Bible.
Yeah.
I like what Jeff said, because is temptation sin? No. But Jeff said we are tempted every single day. It's when we fall and we follow through with the temptation that it becomes sin. But being tempted is not a sin. Even Jesus Christ, as the story says, was tempted. But if we know his word, we know what he has for us, we can push that temptation away and not fall into the sin that comes from that temptation.
Right.
It's interesting to see that the devil here quotes the Bible. He knows the Bible better
Right,
than we do.
right.
And to confront Jesus, he actually quotes the Bible to confront him. So we gotta watch out, like Jeff says, we gotta watch out, because the devil will use whatever against us.
Right. So that was a very interesting there on Matthew chapter 11. The next, number 5. Sister Gutierrez?
Brother, I don't have the lesson book.
I gave it to you, didn't I?
It's okay, you can,
It's right up there.
on the screen.
Can you read it, sister?
Yes.
It's on the screen now.
No, no, up on the screen.
Lucas 11, del 14 a 15.
Huh?
Lucas 11,
11.
del 14 al 15.
And he was casting out a devil, and it was done. And it came to pass, when the devil was gone out, the dumb spake, and the people wondered. To what?
15.
But some of them said, he casted out devils through Beelzebub, and chief of the devils. That's it.
Mhm. Through whom? Cast out devils through whom? Beelzebub.
Beelzebub.
Which is another word for the devil
Yes.
or the chief devil. Satan the prince of the devils. And I also have here that in Hebrew it also means Lord of the Flies. I never heard of that one before.
Lord of the Flies,
Lord of the Lights.
There's a movie, Lord of the Flies.
So we see here how the Lord was working and healing the dumb here, but they accused him that he was casting out devils through
Satan
Beelzebub, I think, or Beelzebub,
is,
the chief priest of the devils, it says there. Okay.
he had a lot of minions.
And that's another name for Satan. Number 6, Brother Jerry.
Number 6 is a murderer and a liar. John 8, 42, 44. And Jesus said unto them, if God were your Father, you would love me. For I proceed forth and came from God, neither came I of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not understand my speech, even because you cannot hear my word? Ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. So another name for him, and another thing that he is a murderer and a liar.
Yeah. Pretty well described, right? How Satan does his work, and he really laid some words on them, but stating to them on verse 44, ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. Okay, so we see here that Jesus was very upset with the leaders that were following him around or asking him questions. So he is a murderer and a liar, and it stays there. He was a murderer from the beginning. From the beginning. So when Eve sinned by disobeying God, then death came by sin. So he was the one that initiated death into the world by sin. And that's why the Lord is stating this in this verse, that he is a murderer from the beginning. Okay. And he abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. So Jesus really recognized Satan and how he works and how he is a manipulator and how he deceives. And these are the characteristics of this enemy, Satan. Very to the point how Jesus describes the devil. Number 7.
Roaring lion, 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as the roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. And we know how lions get their prey, or he just sits and waits and watches. spots a weakness. And once he spots that weakness, he's right out there after it, pursuing it until he gets the prey, what he's looking for.
Mhm.
And he will take it.
Yeah, and I think the key word there is weakness. Satan is like a roaring lion. He's looking for an upset heart. He's looking for somebody that has been hurt, somebody that is in a disagreement in the church, somebody that is just not willing to hear the word of the Lord. That's a weakness. And that's how Satan is able to destroy members of the church of God, because their readiness is not there in the spiritual sense. It's weak, and Satan knows that, and he comes and devours those people. He waits for that occasion, and then he attacks.
Not only we have weakness in those things, but in our other things that we have, possessions. No, it's not that you're depressed or you're sick, yeah, that's a physical weakness. But he sees, just like in the scriptures we just read, you have power, you have numbers, you have wealth. The more you get, you got a good job, you make more money, then you just forget where it came from. Those are the things he's looking for as well too, your possessions, what you hold dear to you, more the physical things here in the world, more than the spiritual things in the world.
I like this scripture because it says he's walking around like a roaring lion. So it's not that he is a roaring lion. He's pretending to be like a lion. So we think of God and Jesus as like the Lion of Judah, you know, that strength, that power. And he's walking around like he has all of it going on. But he's not roaring because he's with gentleness, like we read in Revelation in the millennium where it's the lion lays down with the lamb. That's how God is. You know, he's leading, but he's leading with humility and with kindness and not with this roaring war feeling all the time. Whereas in Satan is roaring all the time, and his desire is that he kills you.
You ever heard a lion roar? You go to a zoo and all, you just walk and catch, and all of a sudden you hear the lion and right away you start looking.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like, a little fear getting to you, it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
you can hear the power of that animal when it roars.
Okay. Next question, Maya. Revelations chapter 12. Dragon. Revelations 12, 3 and 4.
And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. And he sailed to the third part of the stars of heaven, and he cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, but to devour the child as soon as it was born.
So here we see that he's called a great red dragon, right? Having 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 crowns up on his head. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven. What does that mean?
Angels.
Okay.
Angels that follow him.
Yeah. And did cast them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman. So we see as we were talking about in Genesis and Isaiah and Ezekiel, Satan was in the world as God was creating the world. And as he was creating the world, there he was in the beginning in the Garden of Eve. Now we see here what was taking place, what happened during the time that he was cast down to the earth. He drew the third part of the stars that went with him. Not that he took them from God, but they were sided with the dragon. They also broke rank with God and decided to go with Satan. If I saying this right, and cast them to the earth, it says there, cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to to devour her children as soon as they were born. So you see how it jumps into another study there from what we're talking about, the red dragon, right? Anything else that we can add to that?
I have a comment for the last question. Michelle said that to you, Sherry, I'm going to piggyback on that. She said it's very important to point that out and know the difference between the lines.
Yeah. He's just a pretender.
Good to point out the difference between what?
Acting like a lion, to be like a roaring lion, and then, as you know, where it says he is a lion, like how Sherry was describing.
One has
With lion and
power.
lamb.
Even the other scriptures we've read, he's transformed to be like light. It's not
Like
that
God.
he is light, he is pretending. So every time he has an opportunity to pretend to be God or pretend to have some authority, he does it, but he has none.
So, to put it more clear here, as Cherry was saying, that he is pretending to be a roaring lion, or he is just described as a roaring lion. Not that he has that power, but that is his actions and the way he acts. He is given that description to make himself ready to devour that person or persons. And that's all it's saying. He doesn't have the appearance of a roaring lion, but he's just given the descriptions and how he acts and how he motions himself to take people that are not in that readiness of being strong, and he takes them and changes their hearts. That's what this verse is meaning by a roaring lion. Okay. Number 9. Number 9. Nate, take number 9.
Number 9 says various names. Same chapter of Revelation, verse 9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him.
Again, we see the verses here describing how many names do we see here? The great dragon, the old serpent, the devil, and Satan. And he was what? Cast into the world, cast into the earth. And his angels, remember? I said that not that he took them, but that they followed him. And these are the angels that were cast out with him also, because they believed Satan and they were deceived by Lucifer. sometimes we read this and we read this and we read this, and every time you read it, you pick something up, and your mind is awakened by another spiritual gift that God gives you to understand Satan's background, the enemy's background. You're given information by God. We see this war with Ukraine and Russia, and they're being supplied with information about the enemy, of where they're at and what they're doing and what they have. So God is supplying us the same information, how Satan works, how he prepares himself to get you where you're at your weakness. He also is a deceiver, to where he will make you lie or hurt someone, or just be totally, where you have a breakdown in the church or something. That is his work, and in many different ways we have to put our guards up and make sure and be careful. Number 10. Brooke, you want to read that one?
How did Michael handle a contagious situations? Yeah, Michael, he Archangel, when about the body of Moses, just reimbursed him a railing.
Accusation.
That said, the Lord rebuked me.
Okay. So here we see the angel contending. Here in verse 9 is disputing. He's disputing with the devil and about the body of Moses, and whatever accusation the devil was trying to lay on Moses, he was disputing that, and does bring against him a railing accusation, but said, "The Lord rebuked thee." So here was Michael, the archangel, defending the body or the character of Moses, not to be labeled or accused of anything by Satan. And he was defending the situation there.
Yeah, what we want to see in this one is that we can't fight the devil physically, but all we have to do is say, "The Lord rebuke thee," or "Get thee behind me, Satan." We have that power to drive him away like that, but not physically. He's a spirit, we can't see him, we can't drive him away. But by the power of God, we can rebuke him away from us and our temptations.
Right. We always need to ask God for help to be able to help us in many situations that you don't feel right. You're feeling pressure for some reason or another. That's the time to pray and ask God for help. Because you feel weak. You feel like something's not right, and that's where Satan is trying to enter into your mind and heart to break you down. So we need to stand strong. Are we on, Marlena?
I'm listening to this story, and it makes me think of this, because the guy is saying, "Do you know who I am, who I work for?" And so he ends up finding out that he worked for Hitler. And so it's like this, like, we need to say, "Do you know who I work for?" Don't take up this argument with me. Go take it up with my commander, who is God. And so we don't have to engage with the enemy. All we have to say, "Do you not
good point. Jackie had a little saying on that, if somebody is against you, devil-wise, tell them, I'm gonna tell my daddy on you.
That's right. I love it.
Okay. Well, thank you, brothers and sisters, and thank you, everybody that's online. We thank you for being patient with us. We had some technical difficulties this morning, so our technician took care of that this morning. And thank you, Sister Alice, for your questions. And thank you, all the visitors that are online, for being with us. May God bless you, and we'll be back in 15 minutes, 11:45. Thank you.